The fastest ever lap in the history of Formula 1 by mean speed was set by Max Verstappen in the tricky RB21. Whether you're a fan of him or not, you gotta say, it's very impressive what he's been able to achieve in this roller coaster of an RB21, when in some races the car isn't even fifth fastest, and then others, when it does have the potential, he's putting it up into pole position, and actually matching Oscar Piastri at this point in the season. The McLaren is a significantly faster car through every track, and if you actually look at the lap times in most of these pole positions he's gotten, it's typically because the McLaren car didn't put it all together, and he did when the session was most important. Q3, where you have to be ice cold to execute the lap perfectly, that's when Max Verstappen's driving comes into play. Now I know, the RB21 definitely isn't the worst car, but we can easily say it's a bad car. It's very inconsistent, it's tricky to drive. If it wasn't for Max in the car, it's probably like 9th or 10th fastest on most weekends, which is just telling as to how bad the car is overall for the team. But he still gets it on rails, and I want to go over that, how impressive 25 has been, but even the previous seasons. Max in general has been fantastic, so I want to talk about him. If you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe, would mean the world to me. Let's get started with this Max Verstappen video. The RB21, the background of the car, really has issues in both understeering and oversteering, and we've seen that from different tracks, Hungary being the greatest example of the car being in its worst balance yet. The car was meant to build on the RB20, and while that car was at some points in the season slower than McLaren, throughout the whole season we can probably classify it as tied for the quickest car, maybe second if you go off of course, the first like 5 or 6 races being the fastest. McLaren had the fast car in the middle stint. There were a couple of GPs that the Red Bull was a little faster, like Las Vegas. So altogether, it was a little bit slower, but this year it's much more significant. The car has many more problems. It's typically not been fast in really the low downforce sections. So in Monza, this pole was insane to obtain. Same with Silverstone. Japan was probably the one that looked the most promising for the RB21 car. Still fast in the high speed. It's good when it has that medium downforce setup, and Max on a track like Japan is just perfection at its finest. There have been many a times that Verstappen himself has called the car undrivable, and if you look at the other side of the garage, Yuki has really given his frustration on the RB21, at times being a car that he completely does not understand. And most of the team feels this way. They've even resorted to not using the setups in the sim, and now they're going more off of feel, based off of what the drivers are saying, and more logical solutions rather than what the simulator is saying, which is quite a drastic change to a team that's always been known to be pretty on the dot with setups and really the balance of the car. There have been upgrades that have been brought, not done much. At the same time, some upgrades have made a change. Like in Monza, they did end up kitting out the car in a very low downforce setup, started working out, but at the end of the day, it was Max Verstappen that made the difference. He even went on to say that some people in the team wanted to do something different in terms of setup. I then said, no, we shouldn't do that. When I walked back to my own room, I saw a few people still doubting the chosen setup, but I just felt we have to do this, and luckily that worked. Putting in the fastest lap of all time in Formula 1, based off of mean speed, of course.
Yeah, it was a tough take today. You can clearly see that there's only one guy that makes everybody look a bit bad, a bit stupid.
Now, as I said, Max is making this car look so much better than it is, and that's because of how smooth of a driver he is. Verstappen's smooth throttle modulation is very important here, and same with the corrections that he makes on the wheel. If you watch him, he is the most confident driver based off of just what I see when he's moving the wheel. There's very little inputs and changes that he has to make unless the car is extremely unstable, and makes the car look nicer than it is. And even when the car isn't in a great balance, he still makes it look quick. In Japan, Max said it was a very tricky setup on the car. It was extremely unstable. We saw that with Yuki. Yes, that was his first race, so hard to judge, but that is the teammate on the other side, so that's really the only basis we can go off of. While he was able to finish in P1 holding off the McLarens, yes, due to the help with some dirty air and Japan being a hard track to overtake on, it was him that made the difference in qualifying, really controlling that car with smooth inputs, not having plenty of oversteer in those extremely slow speed corners where the car feels like a boat. He makes the car turn how he would like it to, V'ing off a lot of those corners, and as many people have already said for him, he makes it a shorter corner. So if we were looking at a racing line, his is shorter than others when driving, which is just that impressive from Max, being able to hold that much minimum speed, but also getting on the throttle quicker than many other drivers on the grid. The car is pointy. We've heard that plenty. We've also heard a lot of other drivers say it's pretty much an uncontrollable car unless it's Max driving it. He handles the snap on entry perfectly, and the corrections, as I said, are minor. And what frustrates most other drivers, he's able to handle and not get mad by. The very impressive performances this year have been on those low downforce tracks. I mean, Spa was an example of him overdriving the car, and then come race day, the car just wasn't there. But in the sprint race, he made the difference yet again with that wing that is very low, having minimal drag on it. So the car is even more tricky to drive through corners. He's still able to handle the balance, which Yuki Tsunoda calls harsh more than a couple of times. Makes an impressive overtakes when they need to be done for the position, like we saw at the Dutch GP, just handling a car that looked like it was about to fly off the track. And then in Spa, obviously a very calculated overtake on Piastri. In Silverstone, the car didn't look like it was a pole position threat. He ends up pulling it off. And of course, that result in the race, he ended up spinning off. He did have a car that was not made for wet conditions, and both the team and him knew the risk they were taking, but that's what needs to be done when your car isn't quick enough. He even goes on to speak about his Monza lap record, saying, I mean, it's also new asphalt, different curbs, the track has also just gotten quicker. I think if you put the 2020 Mercedes here, you'll go quicker. But then he adds on, especially if you put me in the car, then we go even faster. Which, I don't know if that would be true. Lewis in that 2020 car was phenomenal. And putting crazy lap times in that car, he really made that thing look like the most perfect complete car. Arguably, this MCL car we're seeing in 2025 is probably just as stable and maybe as quick as that 2020 Mercedes. And a lot of the differences that were made on this track and how he got the fastest lap was due to having a lighter load on the car. He had more straight line speed. The Mercedes 2020 hit 340 kilometers an hour max, and then Max Verstappen ended up actually hitting 348 kilometers an hour. In the high speed stuff, the 2020 car still looked better. So with Max's control, especially in high speed with those smooth inputs, it's very possible he could have gone even quicker if he was given the chance to drive the 2020 Mercedes. He's even gone on record last year in Monaco. He even told the paddock, if you guys want to drive my car and fight me in a lap time, go right ahead. He's not afraid of any competition, which has always been something I've appreciated of Max. Has he had the best teammates in the world? I don't think so, but it doesn't really matter who you put up against him. I always think he'll come out on top, especially in this very tricky car. From his smooth inputs to making those setup compromises to try and compete with this rocket ship of a car, and really dominating his teammates. I mean, yes, he's had Lawson in for 2 races. I wouldn't really count that much, but Yuki Tsunoda has struggled to get even close to that of Max. In qualifying head-to-head, it's always him ahead, lapping by seconds. And even Wache, the technical director over there, has said his feel for oversteer lets him push limits others cannot. And even saying, we don't want to reduce the potential to make it easier. It's like giving everyone a wild horse, teammates get bucked off, Max wins in the rodeo. So I think it's fair to say he has mastered the art of driving a bad car and putting it on rails in positions that it probably did not belong in. And I think that in itself has made 2025 much more entertaining. Max Verstappen himself, being the driver that makes a difference. And we all know Formula One is very car dependent. You could have Lewis Hamilton 5 years ago in the Williams, and I promise you, he probably wouldn't even get up to P6 or 7, probably throughout the whole season without the most insane luck possible. And I do believe that would be the same case for Max, but when he is given a car, the potential is there, like times in Japan, Spa, even the Dutch GP putting it higher on a podium position, Imola making an overtake that nobody will forget for a lifetime, and now more recently, the fastest lap ever in Formula One. What a driver. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on what Max has been able to do this year. I would love to see what you guys say. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world. And peace.